It has been a week since Hamas terrorized Israel. We visited one of the brutalized communities where about 100 people were killed last Saturday morning. Others there were taken hostage. It is so hard to hear about, to watch on TV, and even harder to see up close. But Israeli officials and people here say these crimes need to be shown, that the world needs to bear witness. They came to kill, firing a barrage of rockets, raiding a music festival, and taking Israelis hostage. And attacks of the terror still everywhere. This is where it all began. Heavily armed terrorists coming over from Gaza. They now call this the Road of Death. The Israeli Defense Forces showing us where the infiltration first began. Cars littered with bullet holes off the side of the road where Hamas ambushed Israelis in their cars and executed them.
Here's the car, one of hundreds of cars. As is, the guy's backpack is still sitting on the car. Hasn't been, I would say, returned to him, but there's no him to return it to. He was slaughtered.
Down that road, a quiet farming community of about 800 people, right on the border with Gaza. This is where the kill zone.
This is the kill zone begins here as you drive in.
Hamas infiltrating this kibbutz, penetrating fences, swooping in on motorized paragliders. We're about a mile away from Gaza right now. It's over there. You can see those buildings and a little bit of smoke still coming up from there. And this is the gate where the Hamas terrorists broke through, one of 30 locations where they gained access. This video from online showing Hamas begin its relentless gunfire, unleashing its brutality on residents, even taking captive the elderly, like this grandmother from the community. Some homes lit on fire to ensure anyone who had survived Hamas's intrusion didn't. Hamas in control here for hours.
Hamas, after massacring and holding hostages, were here for a number of hours till the end of the first day. We had special forces that came in a series of waves. Eventually, we neutralized a number of them. You have to understand there are hundreds all over, climbing under windows, under bushes, flying in from the air.
The community, now a ghost town. None of its residents can live there, but we ran into one young father who'd come back just to get supplies.
I started hearing gunshots from assault rifles all over, heard explosions, so it wasn't something normal. So I knew something really bad and unusual is going on. So we went back inside, we locked all the doors on the windows. We were besieged in our protected room for something like 20 hours. We sat in the dark.
Mayor Morovia is unsure he, his wife, and 2 kids will ever return.
I can smell the stench of death from everywhere. This is where my kids played. This is where they grew up. They murdered entire families, our friends. They murdered the children, the parents. What they did to the youth neighborhood. You know, I'm hearing all the stories and
It's too much.
Yes, it's brutal, you know.
An eighth of this community, some 100 people, did not survive the attack. Lives taken even at their most vulnerable moments, like the couple who lived in this house.
They were killed in bed. The blood is on the wall.
That's the couple. There's nothing to say. Just nothing to say. Israeli soldiers are now stationed along the fence here with the bodies of some of the Hamas terrorists still littering the ground where they died.
You can see he's wearing bulletproof vests. He came to kill. He put that bulletproof vest on, knives, axes, guns, knowing he was coming to perpetrate evil against women and children. That whole Nakba force of which he's a part of. They landed.
And he had probably been here for hours before you got here.
Yes, he was here for hours before we managed to get him. You can see he's right under the window of this home. Killed right here. Special forces killed him right here, under windows. They were everywhere, sprayed out everywhere, like a video game in the most grotesque way.
This community, this country, forever changed.
It's Israel after Gaza and Israel before Gaza. This is it.
And joining us now is the spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Forces, Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner. Thanks for joining us this morning. The IDF says the assault will be by land, by air, by sea. Is this imminent, and can you explain the objective?
Good morning, Martha. Yes, we are on day 9 since the brutal massacre of families, men, women, and children in the south of Israel by Hamas as an orchestrated strategic attack against the soft underbelly of our society. We are currently striking Hamas in its entirety, from the leaders at the head, from Yahya Sinwar, who has a mark on a target on his back, the mastermind of the massacre, the president, the prime minister of Hamas, the person who has subordinated the entire institution of Hamas to the terrorist actions of this terrorist organization, to all the way down to Bilal al-Qidra, who we killed last night in a strike, who was one of the Nukhba, the commando unit that is Hamas's commando unit that conducted an attack on the Saturday of October 7th in Kibbutz Nirim. And we will strike Hamas from the top, through its institutions, all the way down to the individuals that conducted the butchery of our babies. We did not ask for this war, but we will win it.
Meanwhile, you have 2,300 Palestinians in Gaza who've been killed. You have 1 million Palestinians who are still looking for a way to get out of northern Gaza and go south after you ordered an evacuation, but they have nowhere to go. And it is already a humanitarian disaster.
So we have instructed people living in the north of Gaza to exit towards the south, to move down, and then we're seeing the images of people actually adhering to our message. You know, this is just what a humanitarian means in order to keep people out of harm's way so that we can deal with Hamas. You know, people are moving, people are listening. I don't know if you've seen, but Hamas actually tried to obstruct their movement. They established checkpoints to try and prevent people. They disseminated messaging telling people to ignore that. And it just goes to show how Hamas is actually trying to put the people of Gaza at more risk. They have no regard for human life, Israeli or Palestinian.
But the United Nations called your order impossible, and we've seen people trying to get out who can't. They can't go through Egypt. Doctors Without Borders says it's outrageous. Israel has said they will follow the rules of war. So why not allow everyone who needs to get out before this assault begins?
As I said, we're directing people out of the north of Gaza before we increase our strikes there against the hub and heart of Hamas's operations, and we are seeing that people are actually evacuating. Indeed, we would like to see the humanitarian organizations assisting in the evacuation of people for the welfare of people, and not side with Hamas telling them not to evacuate. That is ridiculous. You know, we've seen Hamas orchestrate over the last day an attack on the people themselves in order to prevent them from evacuating. Yesterday, throughout the day, there were many images broadcasted around the world of a supposed convoy that the IDF attacked, causing 70 deaths or so. This was a false move. It was one of Hamas's many manipulations, and unfortunately, we need to be very clear on what are the facts of actually happening. Before we report about these types of incidents on the ground, we need to have the facts clear. We can't just deduce that this was an Israeli strike.
Well, certainly people are trying to do this. All of this is complicated, of course, by the hostages, 150 hostages. What do you know about them? What can you tell us?
So we are very concerned, Martha, of their welfare. Indeed, it is Hamas who has the responsibility to return them to Israel immediately. I want to be very cautious in anything I say because I don't want to jeopardize any steps that could happen in order to bring to their release, hopefully. But it is a component of our operational planning, and it does influence. So I think out of respect for them and hopefully for their welfare, I think we should leave it at that.
Okay, we have seen increased fighting on Israel's northern border with Lebanon, and Iran's foreign minister met with the head of Hezbollah and said the terror group is ready to respond to any move Israel makes, and that opening other fronts is a real possibility. How are you preparing for that, and how likely is that?
So we have recruited some 300,000 reservists in order to be prepared for any eventuality. Those reservists are both for the southern front on the border with Gaza, so they are in staging grounds preparing for a potential ground invasion if the government instructs us to do so. But also they are dispersed throughout the communities and on the border and frontier with Lebanon in anticipation for potential uptick in violence with Hezbollah. We have had several skirmishes along the border over the last few days, and even today, during the day, we've had anti-tank guided missiles fired at forces, indeed causing some casualties. So we need to be prepared. I would highly recommend that Hezbollah watch very closely what is happening to Hamas and their organization in Gaza as we speak. If they should be very cautious of crossing that threshold, because we are determined to defend the state of Israel. With regard to Iranian involvement, of course they're involved. They have trained, funded, and equipped the terrorist organizations on our doorstep. They've used millions and millions and billions and billions of dollars in order to do so. So of course they're involved, and we are watching that also very closely to see if that has any further influence on our fronts.
Okay.